As the cop pushed Robert's head down into the back seat of the squad car, Mr. Jeeter and I backed away from the scene. Another squad car turned the corner at the end of the block. We ducked around the side of a house and into an alley. "They're getting away," yelled one of the neighbors. "We've got to run." "Can you run?" I asked Mr. Jeeter. "I can run some," he said. We took off down the alley and through a side yard with no fence. Mr. Jeeter was breathing hard, but he could make it. A cop was cruising down the street as we came out from behind some bushes. We jumped back into the darkness and down on the grass between the houses. The police were shining lights everywhere as they drove by. It was a manhunt. Dogs barked all over the neighborhood as we cut through more side streets and made our way to the Century Drive-In Theater. It was nearly deserted inside, so we sat down on the still warm asphalt and watched a movie where Paul Newman was eating one hard-boiled egg after another until his stomach bulged out like a watermelon. I pulled a metal speaker off a pole and turned up the sound. A couple of squad cars cruised past out on Century Boulevard, but they couldn't see us. After about 20 minutes, Mr. Jeeter and I started up the hill toward Crenshaw Boulevard. There was a small 24-hour burger stand with a huge neon Indian head on top. It had glowing white teeth, and its eye winked over and over. 2 words flashed underneath: "Aha, aha." A red neon feather towered about 10 feet above the head. "Let's go to that place for a burger and some coffee," said Mr. Jeeter. "Aren't places like that big cop hangouts?" I asked. "I think they're still busy cruising around the houses," he said. "Besides, it won't take long." We went to the takeout window and ordered 2 cheeseburgers, an order of fries, and 2 large cups of coffee. White fluorescent tubes lined the ceiling. It was painfully bright. The old woman at the order window was staring at us like she knew we were on the run. We sat at the wooden picnic tables around side away from the street. When the food came, we took the cups and the bag around back into the alley and sat on a concrete ledge next to a stinky trash dumpster under a streetlight. The burgers were covered with thin, greasy cheese. The coffee was hot and strong. I'd never tried coffee before. "This was quite a night, young blood," said Mr. Jeeter as he looked up at me while taking a drink. "But I think it's time for you and me to split up. We look kind of strange together." As we both took big drinks of coffee, I felt like I was seeing him for the first time. I noticed his square jaw, black and gray stubble beard, flat nose, and piercing dark eyes. He looked cool. It seemed like a long time ago that we had first met at the liquor store. There was a long pause. "I was afraid to have sex with those girls," I said finally. "I was too," he said. "Not just because I was wondering if I could get it up. I think they had the voodoo. Maybe that's why we crashed." "What do you mean, the voodoo?" "That wild little thing. Her eyes looked funny. You didn't see nothing strange about the way she looked?" "She looked a little crazy," I said. "That's it, but even more. You know, there's women down in New Orleans. They cast some spells. When she get a little older, I think maybe she could be one of them. It has to do with the female powers. You remember how she just appear out of nowhere? That's how they do. They come up on you when your mind is a certain way. Sometimes they give a message, and sometimes they just want to mess with your head. It's never when you expect it, but you gotta roll with it when it come. Your friend, he's the one that's got a whammy on him." "You mean a curse?" Right, said Mr. Jeeter. But he still got a chance. They didn't have time to work out the full mojo. Why didn't you tell us this before? I didn't know before. It come on me about the time that little thing moved in to kiss me, he said. She looked in my eyes and man, it was something else. I've seen that look before. Mr. Jeeter reached over and put the last 2 cigarettes in my shirt pocket, then wadded up the pack. I wouldn't worry. The biggest whammy he got to deal with right now is what his mama gonna do when she find out he tore the wheel off her brand new ride. We both started laughing. Then Mr. Jeeter started coughing. I gotta get on back, he said. Too much excitement for one night. He put his hand on my shoulder and steadied himself as he stood up. Then we shook. His hand was dry and leathery. He paused and locked onto my eyes for a long moment, smiling a little. Then he turned and started walking toward the street. Take care of yourself, young blood, he said without looking back. And don't forget to make them rhymes. I tried to say something as I watched him walk down the alley, but I couldn't. The Aha Indian was winking with that white neon eyelid. The neighborhood was dark, except for the gigantic time and temperature tower on top of the California Federal Bank building. 2:31 a.m. in thousands of tiny light bulbs. It was warm and crystal clear. The Santa Anas were really blowing. I walked fast down Century Boulevard at the far end of the junior high. More dogs barked as I cut through a side yard and walked along the sidewalk of a residential street. My parents were going to be furious, but I didn't care. I'd deal with that when I got there. All I could do was feel the hot wind. Goodbye, Mr. Jeeter. Goodbye. Thanks a lot.